Hello everyone, good morning. So this is a talk with Ms. Yamini Gupta. We have her as a guest today in today's episode, and it's a pleasure to have you in the talk today. And we are hoping to look forward for a very insightful conversation today with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here, Vinuta. It's always good to be connected with the people from your college, and it's lovely that you've invited me over here.
Okay, thank you so much. So one good point about Yamini ma'am is Yamini is also alumnus of IBS Bangalore. She passed out from 2010 batch, is it ma'am?
Yes, 2010.
And for a decade now, she has worked with the big brands, maybe the Tata Communication, the American Express, the Paytm, and now she's Deputy General Manager for Capability Development with Jubilant Foods. So good to speak to ma'am, good to speak to somebody who is into learning and development, and especially, very niche field as the capability development. So when we speak about the capability developments, you would have worked with a lot of managers and the leads during this project on learning and development. How do you persuade them to be accountable for capability development?
Yeah, so I've been working for 10 years, and out of those 10 years, I've been actively working with leaders for the last 5 to 7 years to work on the learning requirements that they might have. And my experience is that you cannot persuade them. You can't convince them at all unless you actually try and partner with them. So most of the times what happens is that as domain experts, we know what kind of learning solution will work the best for employees. This simulation or that game is going to result in that a particular skill building. And we try to, out of goodwill, we try to force fit those learning solutions. And hence, you can't just convince the leaders to pick up a learning solution because you feel it is important for them. Business doesn't think that way. So for business leaders, you need to partner with them, understand their business priorities, and then recommend the right learning solutions that will help them to achieve those KPIs. And once you can do that, you start consulting them actually on what would be relevant for them and how they can reach or arrive at their KPIs faster. And in that journey or in that conversation, you get the leaders invested in those learning solutions, and they automatically start sponsoring the programs because now it's not your learning program, it's theirs, because it's really going to impact their business outcomes. And that's the way to work with leaders. So you have to partner with them and consult them on what would be the right learning solution given the business realities of their department. And that's how you go about it.
That was insightful because capability development, we could hardly see people working on capability development, and this was a very good insight, and I'm sure people can choose this as a field as well who are working in a HR profession.
Yeah.
So that was something with the HR. When we speak about the branding, I'm sure you have worked with the very big brands like I was telling Paytm, American Express, or with the Jubilant Foods now. I'm sure apart from company branding, an individual branding would matter most as well. And when it comes to career building, in establishing one's image that we want in our own personal being or maybe the career path is really important. And what are your suggestions for the young students like us who would be hitting the corporate in a couple of more months? How important is the career branding or individual branding?
Okay. That's a good question. And it's really nice to see that you are thinking about career branding at your age, right at the onset. But when you actually think about branding, how do companies brand great products? I mean, great products have great branding, and sometimes vice versa. And how do companies actually brand their products? And if you think about it, and if you research about it, you'll realize that there's tons of research and development that goes behind launching a product. Sometimes they do almost all the times they do user testing, they'll do iterations, sometimes they'll do a pilot launch, see how the customers are reacting to it. And once they have perfected the product design, they'll then work on the advertising. So they'll work on the narrative, they'll spend some time on creating a story about it, thinking about what could be the best advertisement channel. Earlier, people used to rely a lot on celebrity endorsements. Today, they reach out to influencers because that's where That's where the population is. It's on social media, so they'll reach out to social media influencers to brand their product, and then a great then the branding happens, which just sticks with the consumers. So career branding also works in a similar way. You have to spend a lot of time researching as to what you will be going strength, and it just can't happen overnight. So you will have to spend some time discovering your strengths, discovering your interests, see what you'll be passionate about, do experimentation. You'll have to try a lot of things to realize what you'll be good at, what you'll really like doing. I mean, if just right out of college you know what you'll be good at and what you are interested in, it's great. But sometimes interests also change, right? I mean, as industry changes, as new technologies come, uh, old ways of working actually overnight become obsolete. So 10 years back, when I was in college, and our professors used to ask us, what are your 5 year, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? What are your goals? Nobody said that I wanted to become a social media influencer, because that role didn't exist at that time. And today, a lot of people associate themselves with social media because they're being so good at it. So as and how industry changes, you keep on experimenting, you keep on figuring out what would work for you, and then at what are my accomplishments, what I'm really good at, what are my strengths, and you build a personal mission or a personal vision statement. You develop your own value system, and then you build your brand. So it's going to take you some time, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years to build your brand in a career of say 30 to 35 years. And then the rest of the time you spend strengthening your brand, getting it more, getting it prolific and more profound. And that's how you build your brands.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure career branding is one question that, irrespective of any domain anybody is working on, they should be looking forward for it as well. So when we speak about the career building or about the students in general, I'm sure the characteristics of an individual or even the attitude of a student would matter a lot when somebody is climbing up the ladder in their corporate exposure over the years. How
Yeah.
important are these characteristics or an attitude of an individual?
Yeah, it's very important. In fact, it's all that is important at the start of your career is your attitude and how you are as a person. I'm sure you must have heard it plenty of times, that old adage, be yourself, be yourself. So everybody recommends you to be yourself so that you can actually demonstrate your confident self, and you don't have to be insecure, don't have to put up a face, and you just carry the whole self to work or to academia, wherever you are, in whatever capacity. So to be yourself, you need to also work on yourself and polish yourself in a way that you can develop more strengths, more skills, and more personal attributes. What do I mean by that is that, let's take an example. So if there is the same assignment, if it is distributed to two different groups, both the groups might just reach at the same result, but will use a different methodology, will adopt a different technique. So how you do things actually is a function of how you are as a person, and those personal attributes actually reflect in whatever work you do, whatever roles you pick, howsoever you kind of work with people in different teams. And as you grow in your career, your ability to work in teams, your ability to lead teams, your ability to influence different stakeholders, you become a people manager, then you become a leader, then eventually you start leading whole functions and departments. So who you are as a person matters a lot, and matters a lot to people who work with you, which is why it's very important to work on your personal attributes, whatever they are. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule on what you should be, who you should be, and who you should not be. It really depends upon the roles that you are doing, the kind of ecosystem that you are part of. In matured organizations that have been there for years and decades now, they place a lot of emphasis on planning, sticking to the process, and innovation, because they know they've kind of figured out the game, they figured out the products and the industry.
Mhm.
But in startups, they place a lot of emphasis on execution, and pace and speed, because that's important. You can commit mistakes, but you have to make mistakes faster so that you can learn faster and you can execute even faster. And that's the role of the realities, that's the role of the context, and within the context you have to see how you can develop and polish yourself. But your individual attributes matter a lot, because hard coded skills like how to code, how to run a learning intervention, how to design an advertising campaign, you can learn it. You can learn it in a short period of time. But your individual attributes, whether you are collaborative, innovative, whether you can think analytically, are you creative, you develop those over a period of time. And hence, those are more important, because those can't be taught to you just like that. It'll take you time to develop that.
So
I hope that answers your question, Vinota.
Oh, it did, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think this would be a very good takeaway, irrespective of anybody is looking for either capability development talk with you, or it's about the branding or any other topic we speak. I'm sure this would imply a lot of people out there, and this would help everyone, irrespective of whatever level of employment they are at, or whatever the field they would want to choose. This would help everyone. Thank you so much for that, Neema. And when we speak about your experience in the industry, you have worked with two different industries. Maybe the digital payment platform, which is new in
Yeah.
India, and also the quick service restaurants. Both are really huge industries in India, and then the developing one as well. So, how different is your experience in both of these two different verticals?
Yeah. So when you say digital payment, in fact, American Express was also digital payment along with Paytm. And my current organization is a QSR organization. So when you think about my experience, I really can't point out a lot of differences, because your experience is a function of your role, what you are doing there, and who you are working with, which has been really amazing in all three companies. But as an organization and as part of the industry that they worked in, I mean, in digital payment, innovation was really important. So American Express, when I was working with American Express between 2013 to 2015, uh, the country India had already learned to use credit cards, and debit cards have been there for a long time. I as a student had a debit card. I'm sure that must be the case with you also. But credit cards were new. I mean, like 10 years back or 12 years back, credit cards were still new. Not everybody had credit cards. And organizations like American Express, they actually made it an exclusive, they actually worked on exclusivity. So you couldn't apply for American Express credit card in the beginning. You used to get an invitation basis your eligibility, the kind of income that you earn, I mean, those kind of financial measures used to be the criteria. And when I actually started working in American Express, it became so credits became some everybody had, because there were no eligibility at that time. And when everybody is using a credit card, then you have to pick up something else to incentivize consumers to buy your product, to buy your credit cards. And at that time, I remember everybody was trying to gain reward points, because on credit cards you could use a credit card and you'll get a few reward points, and everybody used to collect reward points and use that to either buy a ticket or book a hotel, or use it to get some discounts for retail products. So that was an interesting time. And from there, because that used to take a lot of planning. You'll have to plan your reward points, you'll have to plan your purchases. Credit cards work that way. And then from there to Paytm, which was a digital wallet, to instant gratification. You no longer needed to plan your purchases. You make a payment, you get instant cash back. And that's how the transformation, I mean, the change in consumers' behaviors happened because of these digital payment companies. And that was so interesting to see. So for that, when you're influencing behaviors and when you're getting people to make an investment in your product, you really need to innovate, like very fast. So American Express used to innovate a lot in terms of its campaigns. At that time in 2013, there used to be a campaign which was some movie blockbuster campaign from American Express. So if you make a spend in six categories like movies, groceries, petrol, which are everyday categories, you get two movie tickets free every month to PVR, which is a big thing back in 2013. Now a lot of credit card companies are doing it. Kotak, HDFC, a lot of them do it. But at that time, it was a hit. I mean, our incremental spend increased so much that that campaign got perpetuated. Similarly, a lot of things. I mean, when we started using Paytm back in, I started using Paytm earlier than 2015 because I used to use it for recharge, mobile recharge, and Uber payments. Uber actually integrated with Paytm the first time. But then in Paytm also, people used to use Paytm at various transaction points because of the cashback. You never knew what kind of cashback you'll get: 10 rupees, 15 rupees, 20 rupees, whether you'll get a 50% discount code. It was so interesting, and they were also influencing the behaviors, which is why innovation for Paytm was also really important. So you see, in both the organizations, innovation was highly important. But when you work in organizations that have been there for some time, food and beverages, like you walk up to a store, you order what you want to eat, and then you take it away, or whether you sit in the store and eat it. For them, innovation is important, but for them, execution is also important. Consistency is also important. Pizza has to taste the same every day, and then only you will walk up to the restaurant, right? I mean, if it tastes really different every single day, you might not rely on that brand. So consistency when it comes to consumer brands like food, then consistency becomes more important. Relentless execution, the same kind of execution you have to do, and then you have to focus on growth. So that's the difference. I mean, if I have to really put it in one line, I think innovation was highly important for digital payment at that time because they were really building the industry, they were influencing consumer behaviors. And for QSR, it's a fine balance between innovation, because you have to consistently keep up with the pace of the industry, bring new products, bring new pizzas, new bakery items. I remember 7 years back, 7 to 10 years back, in fact more than that, Choco Lava used to be such a favorite of everybody. Everybody wanted to order Choco Lava, which was the Domino's specialty. And so innovation is important for food and beverages also, but for them, execution is equally important. So that's the difference, in short.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that. And when we speak about the QSR industry, I'm
Yeah.
sure that maybe because of the food culture in India, it's still booming. As in when we compare it to the Western countries, the QSR is still
Yeah.
booming in India. It has not reached the heights. Are there any few KPIs that this QSR industry follows, and has it been changed during this pandemic situation?
Hmm. Yeah. No, but QSR is growing in India. You see, a lot of us, the population that's earning, and even the students, we have started to order in a lot from outside. And with the advent of aggregators like Zomato, Swiggy, Uber Eats, in fact, we have started to order in way more than we would. So again, I'll take the same example. Over the last 5 to 7 years, you might have seen a change in yourself. I mean, eating out used to be reserved for occasions long back, birthdays, anniversaries, festivals, or a good news, you scored really high on your exams, and you'll as a treat you'll get to eat out, and you'll get to eat at your favorite restaurant. But now it's become an everyday affair. I mean, if you don't want to cook, or if you don't feel like eating the regular food, you'll order it, and almost everything is available. Everything comes to you within 30 minutes. So there has been a change in the way people are consuming food on different occasions, on everyday occasions. Now, coming back to your question on what KPIs does QSR industry chase, it's almost the same. Every business works on profitability and your customer scores. So for QSR industry also, the same set of KPIs get applied, like your EBITDA margins, your revenue, your for customer, because your customers have to say good things about you, and only then you can grow. So NPS is highly important. Profitability is important. Growth is important. How much you are growing, where all you are growing. If you are an Indian brand, are you growing in India? If you if you have aspirations outside the country, how well are you growing in those countries, what kind of presence you have. The same set of KPIs are applicable. For QSR though, because we work and we operate out of our stores majorly, so there's something called same store growth. How much your store is growing year on year, the same store. That's very important, because then you come to know which store is profitable and which store is not profitable. There's something called like for like growth in QSR industry, because different stores might operate in different circumstances, different cities with different kind of consumer base. Different stores might have different products. Some might have a lot of, generally I'm talking about QSR, some outlets might have only burgers, some outlets might have burgers, pizzas, cakes. So you try to compare the similar stores, and then you see what's the kind of growth that similar stores are having. And at the same time, expansion and penetration is also important for QSR industry. So what kind of base, consumer base you have captured? Are you adding on to it? Are you getting new customers? What's your acquisition cost? And as per your growth plans, some of the QSR companies are trying to venture into new brands. They were doing pizzas, now they want to do burgers also, they want to do coffee also. So how well you are growing in across brands, that's also an important KPI. This is majorly, these are the KPIs. But if you're a listed company, some of the QSR companies are listed companies. For them, the return on shareholder wealth, the earnings per share, the dividend that you are giving per share also becomes important.
And I'm switching back to the question on your digital payment platform where you worked. So, how was your experience working in digital payment platforms? Because it was very new to India back then, and then India is moving towards digitalization as well. So, how was your experience working in the industry?
It was amazing. It was really nice. I remember the days when I used to use my debit card. When I was in college, I'll go to the ATM once a month, because in college, the most expenses that you'll have would be on auto, would be on food in the canteen or food nearby. There used to be Krishna Sagar next to our college, and Adigas, I believe. And we used to spend a lot of our time between Adigas and Krishna Sagar or in college canteen. So once a month, I'll walk up to the ATM nearby the college. Every college has an ATM within their premises or just right outside the college. So we'll withdraw money, and then we'll use that cash to spend the rest of the month. Or if I want to do shopping, I'll take my debit card and use that to make the purchase, so that I didn't need to withdraw cash. From there to actually using credit cards, when I started working. So I started using one credit card. Usually you have the credit card of the company that you have your savings account in. And then you start getting more and more credit cards, because then credit card companies stop charging you membership fees. So I remember Amex, HDFC, Diners, a lot of other credit cards I just got for free. And I started gaming on reward points, So I till now, in fact, I mean, there is one credit card that I use. I get a lot of reward points just because of the transactions that I do on selected platforms. From there to actually, then at that time in 2013, 14, you had to swipe your credit cards. You had to have your credit card physically on you. From then to actually scan, touch and scan came. Just have to touch your credit card, and then it will automatically deduct the money if it is less than 2,000 in terms of transaction amount, to actually not carrying anything at all today. So I don't carry any of my credit cards anymore for the last 3 to 4 years, because I could do a lot of transactions using Paytm. And now with the UPI, Google Pay, Bheem UPI, IMPS is so easy. All the banking apps are here now. You could use the app and you can make the instant payment. So from the time when we actually used to carry cash, debit cards to credit cards, to now, when we do not need to worry about whether we have left our wallet behind or not, is such a change as a consumer. And I have been part of American Express and I've been part of Paytm, seeing that journey as an employee also, and what all goes at the back to make it possible for consumers. for customers is really been phenomenal as a journey, I must say.
Agree,
I think
ma'am.
these companies, sorry, if I may, these companies have prepared India to be digitally savvy and to be tech savvy. Of course, there have been a revolution in smartphones, which is why you could actually create apps and download apps and internet at the same time. Internet became almost free now, and the speed at which we can operate, it's been truly liberating in terms of technical revolution. But these companies, these digital payment companies, have actually influenced the behaviors of customers, have actually taught them to use these as a financial, to actually replace cash with these financial instruments. And that has been truly interesting to see.
I mean, these concepts, I'm sure that we wouldn't have even thought about this some 10, 15 years ago. That
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
those was an aspect with respect to a consumer or with respect to a company, maybe the American Express, Paytm, all those industries. But then, how is it contributing to the nation development? Because we are moving towards digitalization now. How is it contributing to the country as whole?
Hmm. How is it contributing to India as a on the whole? Is that first, of course, it prepped up the country to actually think about money in different ways, think about money in virtually and not digitally. It's also reached, I mean, demonetization was possible because there was a company that had a greater reach. In Noida, even 5 to 6 years back, you need not to carry your cash or your wallet at all. You could just Paytm at a kirana store, at a panwala store, at a chai ki tapri, or at a shopping complex. Which is that you just needed to carry your phone and you could do all kinds of payments securely, safely, and that's a huge liberty. That's a huge freedom if you think about it. So it's definitely contributing towards a digital India and towards making digital India a reality. And then all transactions, you can trace all transactions, you can track all transactions. Cash you can't trace,
Mhm.
cash you can't track, right? Which is why a parallel economy exists. But when it is all digital, you can track it. And for government, it becomes, I mean, to put it as simply as I can, it becomes very easy to trace the flow of money in the economy if it's digital, and that's how it's been helping. Plus, it's gotten a lot of people included in the digital economy. I mean, could you have thought about a panwala getting on to digital payment bandwagon long back when credit cards and debit cards were there? I mean, getting that kind of population included in the banking system was a challenge. Not everybody had a bank account. If you might not remember, you are much younger to me, but when I started in 2010, my campus placement was in ICICI Bank, and at that time, the situation was that bad. And in tier 2 and tier 3 cities also, not everybody had a bank account, and a lot of housewives, they did not have bank account. SMEs, I mean, farmers didn't have bank accounts, and sometimes the subsidies won't come to them because they did not have bank accounts. And now they have bank accounts. They are registered as vendors on these digital instruments like Paytm and other UPI or payment instruments, and they are included. So these companies have gotten India included in the digital economy, and there is no bar of how much you earn, where you are, your educational qualifications, the nature of your job. There's no bar of that. So from an inclusivity point of view, these companies have done a phenomenal job, I think, as a consumer.
I agree the fact. So when we spoke about the demonetization as well, I think
Yes.
you were one of those early birds in the Paytm when Paytm was in India, and then that was also paid when demonetization happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
How was the
Yeah.
variation within the company, within the organization? Because you have
Yeah.
experienced it more closer than anybody else has done. Um, how
Yeah.
how was it?
Yeah. So I joined Paytm in 2015, and 2016 was when demonetization was announced on 8th of November, I believe. And I remember when it was 8:30, 8:20, something like that in the night. and our prime minister announced demonetization. And after that, I mean, as an employee, I was psyched because I knew that now people would rely on digital wallets or Paytm to make their payments. And there were like huge queues at the petrol pump. There were crowds at jewelry stores because people wanted to spend their cash and all that. But at the same time, parallelly on social media, I was seeing a conversation that was getting stronger and stronger. People were talking about consumers, customers were talking about Paytm and how they'll have to rely on Paytm and they'll have to use Paytm. They should add money to Paytm so that it becomes easier for them from the next day onwards. And in a couple of hours, there was a push notification on our Paytm wallets which said that you might want to load your wallet because you would need it tomorrow. And the next day on newspapers, there was a huge ad on how Paytm can solve one of the biggest problems now. And it was possible because Paytm had a huge network by then. Paytm had very strong infrastructure. I mean, you can't just make it happen overnight. It takes years of planning, it takes years of hard work to get the right infrastructure, to get the right logistics in place. And we had that at that time, which is why it became possible for a lot of people to use Paytm and not rely on cash, because currency exchange was not happening at a fast pace. You would know all of that. I mean, the huge crowds at banks and people were spending hours and hours in the long queues, but they couldn't get their currency exchange and all that stuff. So Paytm made it possible. At Paytm, there was a saying at that time, go big or go home. When I joined, I mean, that was printed everywhere on the walls, on our notepads, that either you go big or you go back home. And there were an immense amount of execution, like a lot of focus on speed. You can fail. There was a lot of liberty to fail. There was a lot of liberty to make mistakes, but you had to make mistakes and then you had to learn and then you had to execute again. And that was a great thing about that company, that it teaches you to hustle. And we all knew how to hustle. And seeing the demonetization and seeing Paytm shining in demonetization, because that was the answer to a lot of us to make our everyday things easier, everyday transactions easier, was really interesting. And in terms of what changed inside the company, nothing really changed. Paytm used to operate at a fanatic speed even before demonetization, and we continue to operate the same way. I mean, the same focus on speed, the same craziness, the same passion, the same hustle. And hence, it could answer the problem that a lot of people faced with demonetization.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We spoke about the capability development, we spoke about the branding, and we also spoke about your experience in the industry, the two big industries. And speak on the lighter side, I've heard that you are a traveler as well, and which is really interesting and refreshing for me to know about it. I'm sure that one such activity would keep an individual balanced between the corporate and the everyday life. How important is it for somebody to have a extra activity like this to maintain their everyday life?
It's very important. It's very important to have hobbies in life. You can't be defined only with your education qualifications, with your professional achievements, because life is much more beyond that. In fact, as a people manager, whenever I've hired people in my team, I have had a preference towards people who had some hobbies, anything, painting, drawing, sketching, cycling, swimming, trekking, traveling, reading, writing, anything. You should have a cooking, for that matter. Cooking is also a hobby. I mean, with no bias towards any kind of hobbies, but I do feel that everybody deserves a me time. Everybody needs to have a time to kind of refresh, recharge their batteries. Everybody's allowed a downtime, and in that they can go back to their hobbies, connect with their selves, and then feel their true selves, and come back and do whatever is required. So, which is why I feel hobbies are very important, and hence it's important for everyone.
True. And thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks for your time. You took some time to spend with us in this very busy schedule, and I'm sure the insight which you got us today was really important, and I'm sure it would help us a lot. because this was not just strict to one domain or one industry. We spoke about different verticals, different industries, and I'm sure people will be picking different industries and different verticals when they're moving out from the college in a few months. This will help everybody a lot, and then it
Thank
was
you.
pleasant
I
conversation
hope
as
so.
well. Oh, thank you so much. Hope to catch you soon again sometime.
Sure, sure, Vanuta. Thank you for having me. And I wish you the best for your channel. I hope that you get a lot of followership. You kill on whatever KPIs you've set for your channel. And I wish you the best for your future.
Thank you so much.